Hello friends, welcome to part 3 of the Angular tutorial series, and in this video we are going to look into Angular folder structure or the Angular project structure. So this will set your ground for the future development. This will help you identify which files are present under which folder so that you can create new components and new items in the right place under your Angular project structure. In our part 1 video we saw what is Angular and what is all about, and in part 2 we looked into how do we set up Angular. So if you are new to Angular, I will highly recommend to watch our part 1 and part 2 of the video series. So in this video we will just set up a new Angular application, and to do that, what I will do is I will open my Visual Studio Code editor. I will create a new Angular application. So I will say ng new, let us name the application as test Angular folder. Okay, so once I do that, it will start creating the Angular folder structure for us. So right now it is fetching all the information. So now our test Angular folder project structure for Angular has been created. We can go to open this folder or the project structure by going to the place where it has been created, which is under C, users and Himujumu. So if I go to C, and I'm under C prompt, let me find users, test Angular project structure, and I will select this folder. What it will do is it will open this whole folder structure. We will start our journey of learning the folder structure with this src folder over here. So this is the main folder where you will spend most of your time, and anything that is outside this src folder like your cli.json, editor config, package.json, tsconfig.json, all these other files are here to support this src folder. These are the kind of a configuration files, for some for testing purposes, some for packages purposes. All these are other configuration file that will support this src folder. So most of the time you will be developing, if you are a developer, you will be developing things inside this src folder and under this app folder. Now we will look into the app folder later. Before we go into that, let's see some basic things like the assets folder, which is assets folder is something where you will copy all your images, icons and other files that you are going to use in your application. So all things will be copied over here. Then favicon.icon file is an icon file basically for your application. By default, if you see, it has an Angular icon, which is this icon. So this is the icon file. Then styles.css is something is a styles file, which is a global style sheet file where the styles that you define over here can be used on all of the different components that you have, all the different pages and components. You can use these styles over here. So it's a global style sheet. And then test.ts is a configuration file for setting the test environment. Then come to the main folder, which is called app folder. So app folder basically contains your modules and component files. In every Angular application you at least have one module file and one component file. So the module over here groups set of components dedicated for functioning of a certain functionality inside an application, and by default the starting module is named as app.module.ts. You can change that, but by default it is named like app.module.ts. And then these components that are defined over here they define the view and the logic for your application. So if I just let you know the flow of how things flow over here, I will come to the main.ts later. And so what happens is the main.ts is the entry point, which basically in turns call the module.ts, which basically loads all the components that are connected to this particular module. This component.ts has a view part, which is the app component.html that you see over here. Then it has a css part, which is app component.cs, which is the style sheet for this component. And then there is app component.ts, where basically you define the logic as well. Now you can have many components over here, many modules over here. So if I go back and take you to VS Code editor, I can show you how things are displayed over here. So app module.ts, this is the app module where it imports all the components. These are the component that is trying to import over here. Then it also loads some of the other modules that are required for this applications, like browse module and the ng module. And if you go to, so it loads the component basically, and then if you go to the app component over here, which is app component.ts, where it defines the functionality part, plus it calls the template URL, which is nothing, the view of your this component. So if I show you, this is the place where it calls app.component.html, and then this is the style for this particular component as well. This selector that you see is the selector which identifies that this component has to be called over here. If I go to index.html, so in this index.html there is something called app root. So this app root basically comes to app component.ts, which is the selector. So based on that selector defined on that index.html, it finds that this is the component that it has to call, and then based on that component it injects this template URL, which is this gets injected into that particular place. Under the src folder, we have another folder called environments, which basically contains by default two configuration file, one called environment.ts, which is used for development environment, and the other called environment.prod.ts, which is used for the production environment. What these environment file does are they keep some configuration settings which differ across the environment. So maybe you will have database credentials or some server address or some properties that differ from one environment to another environment. Then you can use these different environment files to easily make the switch. Now for example, if you are creating an Angular application which is connecting to a database, and then those credentials definitely will be different between dev, UAT and prod, then you can set these configuration values in each of these environment file, and when you are running your Angular application under these different environments, appropriate environment file will be called. You can, by default there are only two environment file, but you can definitely go ahead and create a new environment file if you have a different environment in your organization. So under this environment, there are two files that you see over here. So by default this one gets called, this is for the development environment, so you see that the production property is set to false over here, and this one is for the production environments, which are production property is set to true over here. So the properties that you see over here are basically defined as a key value pair, and if you want to define your own property, you can easily define by just specifying the key and the corresponding value. Like for example, if I say my db key, and I can say my key is HEN123, and then if I go to my app folder over here, what I can do is first I have to import that environment ts, so I can write that import environment, and then I can use this thing over here. So I can say key equals to environment, so I can use environment dot, and I can use my db key over here. So this is how you use those properties that you define under environment, and it really helps, when you are switching from different environments. Coming to the other file called index.html, which we have discussed briefly earlier on in this video. What it does is it's a plain HTML file which has Angular directives inside that particular file, which in turn call your component files that injects the appropriate HTML and the view into these directives. So if I can show you with this diagram that I have over here, so index file has this directive like the app root that you see over here, and then this in turn call the component main.ts, where you see it has the selectors. So selector identifies, okay, I have to put my code over here. Template URL is the template that gets injected into this particular place, and the styles are the styles that get injected into this place. So you don't need to be having styles over here on this index.html, which can get injected using this directives that you have over here. Now let's look into main.ts and polyfill.ts. We had a brief intro of what main.ts, which is basically the starting point of your app. It bootstraps or load the starting module of your app, which is default is app module. You can change that module. So if you want to change that, this is the place where you change that. And polyfill.ts, as you know that Angular is based or made out of the latest web standards, and there are a lot of different web browsers out in the market. Targeting such a wide range of web browsers is always challenging, because your code may not work or look same in different browsers. So for these reasons, polyfills are kind of a workaround scripts that ensure that your recent code does not break in the older browsers. So there are some mandatory and some non-mandatory polyfill scripts that are mentioned under this file. So you can use them to make sure that your code runs in the older version of the browser. So if I go and show you the main.ts and the polyfill.ts, so main.ts is something like this file. So here it basically bootstraps the app module and it loads the app module over here. It imports the app module from this place. It also imports the environment. So this is the place it does that. Now coming to polyfill.ts, over here if you see, there are some files which are commented out right now. So for different condition you may require these imports, and some files they are not commented out, so these ones are mandatory. You can add your own application import. Now let's look into another configuration file which is called angular_cli.json. This configuration file helps you define settings and configuration for various Angular features like components, directives and other things, and then also it helps you provide configuration for the files that are part of your structure. This file also helps you set up the naming conventions pointing to the correct files in the solution, and also changing some of the settings during the project build or after even the project build. So let's go into the solution and see about this file. What does it contain? Now if I show you some of the properties over here, so the name of the project is test angular folder, and under the apps folder, under the app settings, it defines a root directory of the app, which is src, which it points to this particular place. Index, the name of the starting HTML file, so it points to that index.html. so you can change this if you want. So the index file is the index.html. Then the entry point for your app is the main.ts, which is over here. The polyfill file is the polyfill.ts, which we discussed earlier. And similarly, test.ts, tsconfig file, ts specs file. These are some of the properties that get defined when you create your Angular project. And some of the properties you may want to change it while you are going to create your Angular project, or even after you have created it. So one of those property, for example, is prefix, where this word gets applied to the directives that you create and the things that you see under your components. So if I can go and show you, if you go inside app component.ts, this is the prefix that gets applied. So this prefix gets applied over here. Plus if you go to the index.html, this is the directive that you see that you apply to it. So if you want to change these prefix, maybe you want to change it to one of your company name, you can change it while even creating this whole folder structure. For example, if I go to the terminal window and if I go to the previous folder and I create a new Angular project, so I will say ng new, my new project, and I will specify this property, the new prefix that I want to have, I want to have a prefix of help me instead of the current app. And if I hit enter, so it will create a new project with this new prefix that I have specified. So the new project structure has been created with the name of my new project. And if I can go and open this project folder, my new project, and then if I select this folder and open this thing, you will see if you go inside the src under the apps, and if you open app component.ts, you will see that there is this help me. Under the selector thing, you will see that the prefix has been changed from app to help me. Even in the index file, if you see over here, which is this one, this has changed. So the selector has changed completely. The directive on this one has changed. Now if you see the the angular-cli.json file, then over here the prefix has changed to help me. So this is how you can change the prefixes while developing your creating your Angular application for the first time. Also there are some different configurations like environment and style. So by default it is set to styles.cs, but you can change if you have a different styles conf file, then you can change this one over here while you are creating the your Angular application. Now the other file that we are going to discuss over here is called package.json. Now this package.json contains the list of packages that are required to build and run our Angular application. So there are basically two set of those packages. One of this is called the dependency package, and another is a dev dependency package. So the dev dependency contain the list of packages that it requires in a development environment, while the production packages are part of the dependency group. So if I can go back to my this VS Code editor, and if I can show you, so these are the dependencies, which is the packages that it need during run in the production environment, and these are the packages that are required during the development. Obviously the development packages, there will be a lot of different development packages. So if you see that Karma and Jasmine, Code Analyzer, all these are part of the dev dependencies, which are not part of your production, because the production definitely not require these Jasmine and the Karma and all the other TS lint and all those things. So these are the different packages. Now there is one interesting thing to see over here is it contains some information about the project as well, like what is the name of the project, then the version, the license, and these are just the information. The one thing that you will see over here is the script section. In the script section there is a key value pair kind of commands, where the key specifies the actual command that you will write on the terminal window, while the value property will be the actual command that will run behind the scene. So if you see over here, the start is the key over here, and the actual command that it runs is ngserve. So if I go back to my terminal window, what I can do is I can run ngserve as well over here to run this code and open it in a watch mode, so that the code can run, and then we can constantly change and see the output in real time. We can also, instead of doing this, what we can do is we can just write the start command. So we can say npm start, and it will have the same result as the ngserve command. Now let me show you what does npm start looks like. So if you see that, it gives you a command called ngserve, and it has started running on this browser, so it's listening on localhost 4200. The other thing that I want to show is that you can change these commands. So if you want, you can, right now I have to open this browser window. If you want to open this browser window and still use the same command, what you can do is, let me close this, and I will change this command to say ngserve -o, and if I save this one, and if I again open the terminal window, what I can do is I can do npm start, and now if you see this, if I do this, it will run the command ngserve-o. It will open the browser for you like this one, and also it will compile your project and show it on the browser, the response, plus it will open it in a watch mode. So this is the advantage of using script. The next thing that I will show you over here is the node module. So I have put a hash over here just to signify that it is somehow connected with your package.json. So the dependencies that we talked about just now, where we were talking about dev dependency and the normal dependency, the production dependencies. So whenever you run this npm install command, all the dependencies, the packages that you listed down over here get installed under this node module section. So now let's look into another file called tsconfig.json. As we know that TypeScript is the primary language for the Angular application, but the browser don't understand this language called TypeScript. So this means that the TypeScript has to be compiled or transpiled into something called JavaScript. So this file tsconfig.json defines the compiler options required to compile the project. So this file basically corresponds to the configurations that are required for the transcript compiler. So you can specify those options over here under this JSON file, this configuration JSON file, and whatever options you specify, so the compiler will take those options and will do the transpiling of the TypeScript into the JavaScript. So let's now look into another file, which is tslint.json. This file basically helps to check TypeScript code for readability, maintainability, and functional errors. tslint is a static code analysis tool used in software development for checking TypeScript code quality, which is if TypeScript code compiles with the coding rules that are mentioned under this file. So this is the file that I am talking about. So these are set of rules that have been defined under this file. Now let's look into some other important files under your folder structure, Angular folder structure, which is protractor and karma.conf.js, where protractor is a end-to-end test framework, and this file, which is the configuration file, provide explanation on the protractor configuration options that it has. And karma is a unit testing workflow where it executes certain steps against multiple browsers or platform. It is not like the framework that protractor is. The configuration file over here provide info to the karma, the unit testing workflow, on what it has to do. So these configuration file provide that. These are something that we have to discuss separately in much more detail and cannot be discussed as part of this video, so we will cover these in our later part of our videos. I have created a full overview of all the different folders that we have, and I have tried to cover major portions of those. So E2E end-to-end framework are required for the testing scenarios. This SRC is the source code. We discussed much on that. Git ignore is one such file where you can mention files which are not copied over to the Git repository. And protractor.conf.js is end-to-end test framework. tslint.json is a code analysis tool, so TypeScript code is checked against this configuration file, this tslint file. Package.json, all your libraries get deployed over here after you do npm install. And then application configuration is the angular-cli.json, so you can change the settings for your application over here. Karma.conf is again for unit testing, and it's a great tool for unit testing, and the configuration file here specifies some of the settings for that. Package.json are some of the dependencies for the production and the dev environment that you require, and all those dependencies get copied under the node module. tsconfig.json basically compiles your TypeScript into JavaScript. So these are the major folder structure that we have discussed. Thanks for watching part 3 of Angular series on how to set up and create your folder structure. Do remember to like and subscribe our channel Help Me Coder, and also do provide comments in the comment section below on what did you like about this video. Also, if you have any questions or concerns regarding this current video, do provide your feedback in the comment section as well. Thanks and happy coding.